Hi, my name is Linda. I'm a PhD student at the Software Engineering Division at the Computer Science and Engineering Department at Chalmers University of Technology and the University of Gothenburg in Gothenburg, Sweden. I'm here today to talk about a study that I did together with Francisco and Philipp, and it's called An Empirical Study of Bots in Software Development, Characteristics and Challenges from a Practitioner's Perspective. So, there's an increased presence of tools called bots in software engineering, particularly bots that support software developers in development-related tasks. We've called them DevBots in a paper presented at .SE 2019, which was a co-located workshop to ESEC. So here in the slide we can see 3 examples of these kinds of tools that I'm talking about, and they help with a variety of tasks. The first is integrated in Slack, and it's used for continuous integration. The second is surfaced in Get, which is a code review system, and the tool welcomes newcomers. And the last one is a GitHub bot that makes pull requests to update dependencies. So what has already been done? Well, there are many papers already about bots. We have papers on how to classify them. We have papers on how they affect us. We have papers on what they contribute with. But the problem is that all of these papers assume that we already know what tools to call a bot, so what to include or exclude from a study. The community as a whole has done the second step before the first step, so we're doing research about bots before we decided what a bot is and what tools to include in the concept of a bot. This doesn't mean that there hasn't been interesting research done, but as a consequence, there could be issues later when trying to compare and build on the different studies and the results of them. So, what did we want to find out? Well, as I said, we don't have a consensus of what a bot is and what is not a bot, and we don't know how to go about and compare different development tools. So the first research question is, what is a DevBot? What characteristics describe a DevBot, and what make DevBots differ from plain old development tools? The second research question we had is, how are DevBots used? What benefits do different types of DevBots promise? And the third research question is, what are the main challenges in DevBot usage? To do this, we did a mixed method study where we started up with interviews. We sampled industrial practitioners that at some point worked with tools that they self-identified as DevBots. We began by inviting practitioners from our personal industry network, who then referred us further to other potential participants. Then we used a saturation approach, where we kept inviting new participants in parallel to data analysis, while the data offered new information. The interviews took between 15 and 45 minutes and was done either face-to-face or via video conference. In parallel with the interviews, we performed open and actual coding that allowed us to identify limitations of the interview guide. We had 21 participants in total. After the interviews, we created a survey. So the survey targeted people in software development that had and had not used tools that they self-identified as bots. The survey was web-based and it contained 48 questions. After 5 initial questions collecting basic demographic information, the main part of our survey consisted of 2 top-level sections covering the definition and the usage of bots in software development. We had 111 respondents to the survey. The reason for us asking them to self-identify the tool was because we didn't want to give them a predetermined view of what a bot was. The whole point was to ask for their unbiased opinion. So, we started with this ambition to find a clear distinction between a bot and a not bot. And what we found is that there isn't one definition to rule them all among people working in software development. but several different definitions. So we created 3 personas representing how people thought of bots from the material collected during interviews. We gave the personas names based on the main characteristic of what a bot was to that specific persona. So the first one, Alex, was named after autonomy. Alex defines bots primarily as tools that work on their own, without requiring much input from a developer, on a task that normally would be done by a human. Or, as an interviewee put it, the trigger shouldn't be a human taking initiative. It should trigger on something else than someone telling it to do so. The second persona is Charlie. Charlie we named after chat, because to Charlie, bots are tools that communicate with the developer through a natural language interface, which is typically voice or chat, while caring little about what tasks the bot is used for or how it actually implements these tasks. A quote from one of our interviews is, "The fact that I chat with it makes me think of it more as a bot." The last one is Sam. Sam comes from smart. Interviewees thinking like Sam expects a degree of smartness, context awareness, or fitness for a task from a DevBot that goes beyond normal tools, or typical Alex-style bots. A quote from a Sam interviewee is, "They're sort of these agents that have triggered on some events that you may not even be aware of, and they perform an interpretation of the world that you don't know the rules of, and then they perform an action that you may notice." So if we go back to research question 1, what is a DevBot? What characteristics describe a DevBot? What make DevBots differ from plain old development tools? Well, a DevBot is a tool that does some type of automation in combination with human-like traits. So all of the personas agreed that some type of identity, for example, a human-sounding name or a cute profile picture, is a characteristic that distinguishes DevBots from plain old development tools. In addition to this, Alex needed autonomy, so the tool should work on its own. Charlie opted for language, so the tool should communicate via voice or chat or text. And Sam wanted something smart, so autonomy, adaptability, and intelligence. The bot needs to be a bit smarter than just running a script. And as you may notice, one tool can be considered DevBots by several personas. The persona is how a person using the tool thinks about it. In the survey, we gave each respondent a main persona based on their answers. We see that Charlie is the predominant persona type in respondents that consider themselves to have bot experience, while Sam is predominant in respondents considering themselves to not have bot experience. One speculation here is that this could be because there aren't many available Sam-style bots. The ones in our study mainly were developed in-house and not publicly available. So even if a person thinking as a Sam might have used tools classifying as Alex bots, that person wouldn't consider those tools bots and would therefore not identify as a bot user. So, research question 2. How are DevBots used? What benefits do different types of DevBots promise? We group the benefits into productivity and improvements beyond human. DevBot usage is frequently motivated with a slogan that they improve productivity. But what is then productivity? So, depending on the persona, this was seen in different ways. Alex mainly saw productivity as automation of tedious tasks. Charlie saw the benefit of integrating all the information available in the chat. And Sam looked into the vast amount of data modern systems generate to gain new insight or find patterns that humans might overlook. The second branch, improvement beyond human, are tasks that bots do better than humans. For example, doing things consistently around the clock or on a scale not possible for humans to handle. In the survey, we asked why the respondents self-identifying as bot users used the bot. Remember from slide 8 that these are mostly Charlie and secondly Alex personas. So 85% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that a reason they've used DevBots is to be quickly aware of problems, followed by a desire to automate tedious tasks. In turn, 66% agreed to use that they use DevBots to monitor the up status of services and to have all the information in one place, whereas 64% are interested in monitoring specifically code integrations. So for the remaining 5 reasons, less than half of the survey populations agreed that these are reasons they have used DevBots. So what are then the main challenges in DevBot usage? The first one is interruption and noise. All of us personas had some issues with this, but it manifests in different ways. So Charlie has bots that creates noise in the human communication channel. That is overloading Slack channels or pausing too frequently, and this in turn turns into a cry wolf situation where people stop listening to what the bot is saying or texting. Alex's problem is similar. So as an example, GitHub bots posting too many messages in code review systems. And both of these problems can be alleviated through a bot design or configuration that is mindful of whom to notify of which events. SAM's bots often interact more proactively and directly with the developers, so they instead need to be carefully evaluating how often and when they should interrupt. And here a good bot waits until a developer is ready for feedback. The second challenge is trust. So most interviewers are not troubled trusting a bot to correctly execute very simple and well-defined tasks. Alex typically is skeptical regarding DevBots that actively modify code or execute other operations that require significant understanding of the system or environment. For Sam, on the one hand, the definition of a bot is to come up with non-trivial solutions to problems in an autonomous way. But on the other hand, Sam is also aware that even small problems can cause developers to lose trust in their DevBots. The key solution here is the existence of a reliable test infrastructure. Interestingly, a side effect of mature and trustworthy DevBots is that human developers are not sufficiently questioning the actions of DevBots anymore. They just simply assume that the bot's way of solving an issue is the best. And this is unwanted because if an automated process is reliable enough that it requires no human oversight, it would be implemented directly in the infrastructure or toolchain. The third challenge is usability. And this is mainly a Charlie problem, since Charlie wants to interact with the bots through a natural language interface. It's hard to understand the outcome of any particular conversation if the dialogue is sophisticated, and on the other hand, if it requires a specific syntax, then the developer has to remember what exact input the bot needs to trigger desired behavior. And to make sure that this isn't a problem, the bot should repeat back what it had understood in the more sophisticated versions of the language. So other challenges, we had some more specific problems for specific scenarios, like bots that interfere with each other. And finally, it's interesting to observe that none of our interviewees has expressed fear to be replaced or made redundant because of current or future DevBots. So far, developers struggle to imagine a world where software development is not predominantly a human activity, in which bots only play a supporting role. So, what is a DevBot really? We created a flowchart with the information that emerged from our interviews, and this model can be used to decide on a high level whether a given tool is likely to be considered a bot and for which persona. So, we start in the upper left corner and answer the questions. Starting with, does the tool use chat or voice? In case of yes, then we can follow the arrow down and see that Charlie will most likely consider this tool being a bot. If no, then we can continue with the questions. So, conclusions. I started by saying that there was a problem with current research in bots. There are plenty of good papers about bots, but all of these papers assume we already know what tools to call a bot. And the papers call different things bots, which made it hard to compare or build the current literature in future studies. So the result of this study was 3 personas: Alex, Charlie, and Sam, each associating distinct characteristics with the term bot. This supports future research and applications in the field by allowing researchers or practitioners to target specific types of bots to meet the persona's corresponding expectations. In addition, we provided a set of self-identified benefits that can be subject of further studies, and also a set of challenges to be mindful of when creating and evaluating DevBots. We also noted some blank spots. Most of current research in DevBots is focused on tools that Alex would consider being bots. And both Alex and Charlie can find available off-the-shelf bots, while Sam bots are few and far apart, if at all. Thank you for watching.